Hi, welcome to the window table project. Today we're going to be working on a window table that sits below or slightly below the windowsill of a window. Now these tables are a little smaller. They're only about 36 inches wide, about 18 inches tall, and about 16 inches deep. You know, they're meant to put a plant or maybe a pet. Pets love these tables on, or just sit on and look out the window. They're very popular with my family, so much so that I'm building 5 of these because it seems everyone in my family wants one. The table is going to be built out of solid walnut, which I have dimensioned and cut in front of me for the 5 tables. The legs are going to be 1.5 inch square, stock. And our traditional joinery for this would be a mortise and tenon joinery. We're going to forego that today, and we're going to use something a little different. Not too much different. I'm sure everybody's heard of these by now. The Domino tenons. Now these tenons are made of beech wood, and their size, they have different sizes. And the Domino XL machine cuts this tenon into the edge of the wood, and you insert the Domino tenon and then insert it into the other side of the wood, and this forms a very, very strong joint. Now we're going to be cutting these tenons using the Domino XL, and I'm going to show you how to set it up for the different aprons that we have, the smaller ones, the larger ones, the legs, and such. And you'll see how the Domino XL works and how fast we can put this table together. It'll be remarkable. So once again, thanks for tuning in. Subscribe to the channel if you would, please. And if you find the video informative, or you learn something from it, or you just like it, like the video for me, and I sure do appreciate it. So here we go. All right, so let's talk a little bit about Festool setup, the Domino XL setup, and how we do that to get our mortises cut for the window table project. Now, you can see here I've got a mock-up leg, and I've basically cut my mortises in this leg and inserted some domino tenons, and then I've also cut this. These are all test pieces just to kind of get my reliefs right here and see how it's all going to come together. This is necessary to make a few test cuts so you know how to use the indexing pins on the Domino XL. So what do I mean by indexing pins? The Domino XL uses a series of pins in order to help you lay out your cuts, your mortises. Now you don't need to use these pins if you don't want to, but I would highly recommend using them. They will make your work go much, much faster and eliminate the need for laying out anything. You don't need to lay out a thing. Just have to have it in your mind where you want your mortises to be, and then use these pins to index them, and you'll be able to cut them repetitively with perfect accuracy without having to measure a single solitary mortise. Now, how do you do that? Well, it's really quite simple. It takes a little bit of practice, a little bit of trial and error, because you have to have some test pieces to lay it out. Okay? There's a height gauge used by these stair steps here that have preset determined heights like 10 millimeters, 15 millimeter, 20, 25, and 30 millimeters. And there's also on the side, and you probably can't see this, but there's a gauge that goes from 10 to 50, a measurement gauge, and you can slide that up and down to get your where you want your height to be. So once you measure that, and you can see that my mortise is offset, it's not centered, and that's because I wanted a little bit of, let me stick these tenons back in here. I wanted a little bit of relief right there. I didn't want that flush, so I wanted that a little bit inset, in other words. So once I got that measurement, I set my height. In this case, it was 15 millimeters. And yes, it's in metric, so you got to get used to that a little bit, but actually it's quite easy. So I set that to 15 millimeters. And then I had to determine which pins I wanted to use. and it turned out that I wanted to use these 2 middle pins, and I basically slid my end work, my fence down. I slid my end work against that pin, and then made my first cut. And then once I made that first cut, I slid that mortise over the pin, and then slid it against there and made my second cut. Okay, so that's how I made my mortise cuts. Easy peasy. Okay, no problem. And then I used the same 2 pins on the ends of the aprons. Now you'll notice on the apron that it's not centered. See if I can show that to you. It's not centered. This end is very close to the edge, and this end has some meat on it. So this is where some ridicule, if you will, or criticism comes in for using the pins. Are they always perfect and on center where you want them to be? Nope, they're not. Could they be? Well, you can get that accuracy. You know, there is a center line on the Festool gauge, so you can mark your center line if you want to where you want it, and just use that. But now we're back to having to mark everything and lay everything out and measure everything. If you're the kind of person that doesn't mind doing that and wants to take the time to do it, fine, go right ahead. You can do it. There's the versatility in the Festool, the Domino, to achieve that perfect symmetry, if you will. In my case, I didn't care because I purposely made the meaty part on the top of the rail or on the top of the table. That way, any weight that was on it would be distributed on that heavy part. And the bottom part really doesn't have any weight on it at all. So it worked out just fine, and I really don't care, and it fits perfect. And it works fine. Okay, so what I want to do now is I've got these short upper aprons to cut, and I'm going to cut a few of these just to show you how it works, and then we'll go from there. Give you an idea how the Festool works, how the Domino, how easy it is to do. So once again, I'm just hooking up the dust collector and the power supply. Let me get this set. Let me get my height set to the right height. In this case, it's 10 millimeters because the work is 20 or 19. All right. So once again, I'm going to be using these 2 pins. This pin I'm going to be using on the outside of the wood or the board first, and then I'm going to cut that first domino or first tenon, and then the second one I'm going to slide this pin over into that hole, hit the edge of it, and cut that second tenon. Here we go. So you can see that it cut the same tenon as this. Same tenon as that. Didn't measure a thing. There's no lines on there. There's no marks on there. Fits nice and snug. Real snug. and that will fit in. This will be the short tenon on the short side of the table and fit in there and be perfect. And it's a nice snug fit, not too tight, not too loose, enough for some glue. All right, so now let me turn this around. And on this side, I've got to use the other tenon, or the other pin, because I've got, whoops, let me turn the board around. There we go. Had to make sure I was on the right side. All right, so I've got to use this other pin because now we've got to index off the other side. All right, and I I guess I ought to move this clamp just a little bit because I'm a little bit too close. There we go. All right. Two perfectly indexed mortises. Took me what, a couple minutes to cut it maybe, and then these tenons will fit in, and you've got a perfect joint every time. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and cut the rest of these. I'm not going to bore you with that because I've got a bunch of these to cut, so it's just repetition. But we'll go ahead and cut those and. All right, so one of the last machining processes we have to do is to cut the table slit so that we can get the table to mount to the actual table itself. So on the lower and upper aprons, or on the upper aprons, I'm sorry, we're going to cut a slit to fit this table clip in. And I'll cut one, we'll see what it looks like. All right, so I didn't just randomly, cut this piece. I'd already set this up measurement-wise. The clip fits in there like this, and then the table comes up on top. Then you can screw that. There we go. You can screw that to the table, and then this allows contraction and expansion because this clip will be able to slide. Obviously not this much, but be able to move along this rail and without any problem so if the top expands or contracts, it won't crack, or hopefully won't crack. So I'm going to cut the rest of these, and you're more than welcome to watch for a little bit. Like I said, those are for the top, and I'm going to cut these other ones while you don't need to watch because it's boring. All right, so I've got all the pieces milled for the window table project, and have one table actually mocked up and put together just to see how the fit and finish of everything was going to look. Make sure that I didn't make any mistakes, which I didn't. It came out really nice using the Domino. It's very, I wouldn't say it's tight, but it's snug, I guess would be probably the best word to describe the tenons on them. There are some that fit a little better than others, but I think that's probably could be said about hand-cut tenons too. I mean, I don't think you ever get two exactly the same. So anyways, now our next step is going to be to go ahead and mill the edge profiles on all the pieces for the table, and then after that we'll have to build a top. So we're on to the edge trimming or edge profiling next, which will get some definition and some character to the piece. You'll see what we do here in just a little bit. So stand by.